Get ready for an uplifting experience with Coached Soul. Join us as we bring you the dynamic duo of Steve Hudgens, a licensed professional counselor, and Kenya Evelyn, a transformational leadership coach. Together, they'll guide you through engaging episodes filled with valuable insights and actionable tips on mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Coached Soul is your go-to podcast for empowering discussions that will help you thrive. So let's get started and welcome our hosts, Steve and Kenya.
We are back. Welcome to Coached Soul. What a joy to be able to honor Mother any day, not just the specific day, any and every day, if I may add.
Holy.
With so much love and joy and gratitude for who you be as a mother, who your mother was for you. And based on that reflection, you get to be the one to shift it. Do I like it? Do I change? Where do I want to change? And craft it like a painting with the frequency of creation and possibility. Now, here's Steve. Here's what we have going on this week. This podcast actually is going to come out right before Father's Day.
Yes, happy Father's Day early to all those who are listening. And, Father's Day is that third Sunday, and it's here.
And this Father's Day for me is very different. I actually now have a little bit of relationship with my father, a little bit.
That's good.
He came back in my life in 2020 after 20 years of not talking to each other. I didn't even have his number. So in 2020, right around Christmas, we, I'm not going to say we reconcile because I reconcile. It wasn't a we. It was the funniest call ever. It created closure and connection for me, which actually showed his mental health because he felt like nothing was wrong. And anywho, so here's my nugget for every one of you that right now maybe feels a little bit heavy about, I don't know if my father is a picture, I don't know what to do. You get to decide, how do you want to bring fatherhood's memory to you? But what do you mean? You don't know nothing about my childhood. Oh, I do know. My father left when I was 3. And that lack of masculine reflection, it created so much pain and unworthiness to me in reflection to my marriage and the way I got to start to raise my 2 boys, until I got bit by the head, literally by the Holy Spirit. And let me tell you this, you actually get to decide, how do you want to honor the men in your life? It's a decision.
It's interesting you say that because, last podcast, we talk about women. And the history goes back to the 16th century, and the Greeks honor women. But when I researched the origins of Father's Day, on July the 5th, 1908, there was a West Virginia church that sponsored the First Nations' first event explicitly to honor Father's Day. And I'm like, it wasn't until 1916 until President Wilson honored the day.
So you have 300 years of gap of not honoring out loud what is a father. I have some ideas, Steve. Tell me, what do you think? What if the idea of man was to provide, period? It was all about hunting and bringing and providing and conquering, but he was not seen as a father.
That's interesting.
Could it be? I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying intuitively, it's like, I wonder.
Well, and you think about men as fathers and how we're raised, right? And we're raised to thrive. I love my dad. It wasn't until recently, probably within the 2-3 years, that I came to a near-death experience that I had an eye-opening things that, scriptures talk about fathers don't exasperate your children.
Exactly.
Men to love your wives. And so I think God knows the criticalness that men can bring as a father, right, into the world. And so I remember, I love my grandfather. He was my maternal grandfather, the only one I knew because my paternal grandfather died 6 months prior to me being born of a major
Mm,
heart attack. So I never knew him. I knew of him, of the stories of over 1,000 people showed up at his funeral because he was well liked in the community. And I still have the stuffed tiger that he bought 6 months prior to me being born. So he knew I was coming. And that meant something to me. And so I carried that tradition down to my grandson and giving him a tiger. But when it comes down to, my father, he meant well. I got so aggravated at him one time living in Japan, and I was mowing using his lawnmower to cut grass, making some great money on the weekends. Here he is as I come in all sweaty and hot. He says, "I want to talk to you." And there's this piece of paper on the table. He flips it over and it says lawn mowing contract. I read it. He typed it up that I pay him $25 for the use of his lawnmower. I had to pay my own gas.
yes.
He would maintenance the lawnmower by sharpening the blades so the grass will look crisp and clean. The neighbors will like how the blades and how I would mow. That he would take all care of the maintenance. But I got angry because did not want to give up my money.
Sure. Your
But my
profits.
father taught me a great lesson through that. And so when you think about fatherhood, we want the best for our children and we want to teach them life lessons. And often I think as fathers, we become misunderstood. And yet we have our own mother father wounds. And for men, it's difficult to express our feelings and hurts. And so often our intentions can get misunderstood.
Mm,
But if men would go in and start processing, that's the part of the reason why I became a therapist,
mm,
is because I knew, as we talked about the parental alienation syndrome, that I knew I was a good dad. I didn't spank my kids. I tried to raise them up in such a way. But there's that outlying force of I'm a bad dad, the thought of it.
mm. I think what I
So
hear you saying is the result that you saw, it felt like, oh, I think they think I'm a bad dad,
yeah,
but you knew you were not. But the results
correct.
you were harvesting, you've been treated like a bad dad. I see that. Now, let's turn this back to our listeners. We're here to deeply see and honor the fathers out there. I see that in my own life. My husband made millions of dollars in his businesses and lost millions of dollars. And I actually saw his identity fluctuating because so much of man is wrapped up on providing. You're good XYZ or else you XYZ. But if you ask my children, if you ask my 3 kids, what do you think about dad? They're never going to say anything about their businesses. They're never going to say anything about the partnerships and the calls and the coachings and the stock market. None of that. They're going to say, he's a great dad. He's always with me at the ballpark. He's a great dad. He watches me figure skating. He's a great dad. He takes me out to eat.
But the best thing that a father can do for his children is how he treats his mother. I saw my father do dishes. I saw my father do some cooking. I saw my father help clean. I
Mm,
saw these things with my father that I did the same thing in my marriage, that I would help clean and things of that nature. And it's funny because I remember the kid's mother had a surgical situation that occurred. and she was supposed to be laying on the couch. And here I am bringing a basket full of clothes that need to be folded. And she got up and I said, lay down. I got this. And it's important for fathers to help mothers
100%.
as well, to
100%.
present an example for your children, right? That's the best gift that you give a child, is how a father is able to treat his mother. Because children are going to learn whether to respect or disrespect their mother by how the relationship
Based.
between the two
Yes.
goes.
100%. Oh, well, I couldn't agree more. And if you ask me, who was speaking was my little girl, not my wise woman. Because when I, Kenya, see how he treats the kids, I feel like, man, I chose the right man because he's a great father. It makes me so happy to just watch
Yeah.
him, put our little girl in his lap and hold him. So back to our listeners. I see you wherever way you are in the spectrum. If you have an amazing job or if you don't have a job, you're still a great father. If you have one kid or if you have a pet and you're trying to get pregnant, I see you, right? You're supporting your women. You really want to hold that baby. If you have been alienated from your kid, you're still a great father.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I talked about the hope 2 weeks ago of parental alienation syndrome and how my daughter and I were talking, but it's still transgenerational. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's something I wrote in my book or a podcast, but all of a sudden she's not talking again. And I have no clue, and I've asked. But as a father, unconditional love means no matter what happens,
That's right.
you love them anyways. And fatherhood is about creating a safe place for children and that mother to land. And in therapy, I talk to men and I say, as men, women are like water. They're emotionally moved. Okay. Doesn't matter how, they're just that way. Men are to be like a bottle, not to suppress, not to oppress, but to be like a container that a woman can pour herself into, that is rock solid. And there was a point in my life that I was reactive because of my childhood wounds. But as I became a therapist and I realized my errors and my ways, and I look at healing my wounds, I'm more solid on a foundation. And that, as a father, my grandkids are important to me. My children are extremely important to me. I cannot control. I can only manage my emotion. And a lot of times when we think about, trying to control our children because they need to listen to me. No, it's not about the need to listen to you. You want to create an environment that your children want to listen to you. I think there's a big difference to that.
1,000,000%. And also, I want to go back to what I just said about just pouring life into the man and telling them, hey, you are great. You're a great father. I see you. You're a great person. I see your efforts. I see your heart. If the man that's hearing this, if you that's listening to this podcast, if you don't believe those words, if your internal talk is, no, I know I'm not. Look at the results in my life. No, I'm not. She tells me all the time how crappy I am. No, I'm not. If you got used to the negative, I want you to notice. And just like we were here a couple of weeks ago talking about the women and the mother and pour into herself, my question for you, my challenge for you is, what could you pour into you that will feel authentic? What words would feel authentic? Which place in your heart, in your mind, you could go that will actually integrate the truth of who you are, not what you see it out there. Because I tell you what, since we are co-creating our reality with God, if you really want to be the dad that you know you're created to be, and you want to be seen and respected, you get to see yourself that way.
You know, Kenya, I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I think about growing up, I'm going to use the word imprint. For our audience, imprinting, what I mean is if you take a kitten that's never had its eyes open, you place it with a female dog that's able to nurse, and the kitten opens its eyes, and that's all it knows is the dog. That cat is going to act like a dog because that's what it sees. Okay. And so growing up, what we see in our fathers is how we are imprinted.
About what fatherhood is.
But
Sure.
what fatherhood is, right? You know, as much as I see my parents fight, my dad loves my mother, and I see that. And I'm thankful for my father and some of the things I didn't understand as a child, that as an adult, having my own children, I saw the provider. I saw him as him, even though he had father childhood hurt wounds, that I was able to let go and admire and love my father. You know, it's unfortunate that my mother is not allowing me to see my father. She's very protective of him, but his mind is going. And I do hope my father can listen to this podcast and know
That you love him. Yes. Say it, Steve. Say it.
yeah, that there is no animosity. There is no hurt towards my parents. There's only love and acceptance for them. You know, I just I admire my dad because he taught me to have ethics. He's taught me to work hard. Some things I never understood. But when we begin to look at fatherhood, it's challenging because it is sometimes a thankless role, because as leaders, we don't get the advice of do this or how to do this. When we make a mistake, it's you're not good enough, or we feel like we're not enough. And at the same time, as you were saying, men need that praise. Thank them for going there and doing the dishes, not complain how that glass is not fitting in that dishwasher just right. Just be thankful for that. Yeah, there's guys like that TV show with Tim Allen, Tool Man, Fix It Man, that might not get it right when he tries to fix things, but at least he's trying. Fatherhood is challenging because we're leaders. Not to say that women aren't. I'm just saying in the field of manhood.
I think fatherhood is harder from my
Yes.
perspective.
Okay. How is it harder from a woman's perspective?
My perspective, being with this man for 19 years and watching him as a father for 14, is the pressure. We women, we're so allowed and expected to break down. If I'm break down, I'm hormonal. If a man breaks down, he's weak. But we're both humans. And if I, Kenya, do a great job raising my kids, my boys specifically, is to tell him it's not about men cry. It's okay that men to cry. We already heard that. But it's like, you will go through cycles in life, and that means nothing. If you attach a meaning to being down, you will remain down. But it's like telling the waves, of the ocean to just go one direction. They're going to go whatever direction is the moon. And it's
Right.
all part of being the ocean. You are the ocean. Some days you're going to go low, some days going to be middle, some days going to go high, some days going to have double wave, double rainbow on top of your wave, or no rainbow at all, tornado rain. What if this just is? And I feel like as women, as society, I'm not going to say as women because I don't view my husband that way anymore, but I really felt like it was his job to have our house anchored and anchored right. I had some
The Rock
rules
of Gibraltar doesn't
exactly
break.
about the way that the house needed to look like. And there's a little boy inside of my man, also healing,
Oh, yes.
just like a little girl inside of me. So as we grow as society praising women, and more than ever, there's a new wave of matriarchy, and which, man, I'm so pro. Thank you for seeing us. Like, thank you. But again, we're not gonna make the pendulum swing over here, zoop, and now the man is invisible. Nothing between nothing. There is a place, actually, a place of healing is a place that both feminine and masculine is seen, is rejoiced, is builded upon each other. It is the yin and yang. It is the fire and the water. It's the perfect dance of what God intended. And I really say perfect, but not with the intention of perfection,
Right.
because perfection comes from ego of getting things right. But the
Well,
perfection
and
of whatever it is okay. The perfection of perception of acceptment. I accept you the way you are, and I want to be accepted the way I am. So I get to offer you the way I want to be seen.
that's the same way with fathers. The majority of men can be great fathers if allowed, not only by society or women, but it's getting outside of your head as a man to look at that it's okay to make a mistake. Just don't do it again.
Yes, allowed to try and error. Isn't it what we're doing as motherhood? But nobody's
Right.
here taking notes.
Right.
Or may I correct myself? I know that there's stories and listeners that are there and that lands in every spectrum. I know that there were women that have been micromanaged as a woman and as a mother. And maybe they're in their second marriage or third or whatever. And I know the same thing with men. I know because I serve clients and stories and I hear. So I don't think it's a thing of gender. That's my point. We get to remember that this is a human experience.
Correct. And if
And
we
that we
allow
need
that,
each other.
well, if we allow grace and mercy to come in, that's unconditional love. And as a person of faith, I read my Bible every day. I know some people think, well, the Bible is a myth. But doing anthropology and archaeology and the study of it, there is a lot of history. I was talking to one of my clients the other day. He's a naval reservist and he's spiritually looking. And I said, I want you to do something. Look up Matthew Fontaine, who is a naval ship captain that discovered the pathways of the sea because he read the book of Psalms. And sure enough, as he sailed, that's how our vessels today are able to sail the seas, is because there are pathways like highways on land that show you the way. But that's just one example. There's so many more. And that's another different day for a podcast. But when you think about fatherhood, for me, it's about being not the best, but being the most authentic soul that I can that mimics my Heavenly Father in such compassion, generosity, mercy, grace. That's why a lot of my clients, when they come to me, they say, you're not judgmental. No, because there's nothing new underneath the sun. We just experience things in a different way because of our
100%.
personalities, but pain is pain. But
Mm.
as a father, we're there to mentor, not to alienate, not to be forceful, not to be in such a way that exasperates the children.
Mm.
Fathers are a source of strength and power. I see that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, a man can be nurturing if allowed. But first, I had to look at how do I love who I am and stop looking at myself as a person that is not worthy.
Mm.
And so, fatherhood, as we come to a close, we get about 4 or 5 minutes left. And this is being vulnerable. I didn't know what to think. It was a scary moment for me to hear I'm pregnant.
Mm.
All kinds of thoughts, and I'm thinking about her and what she's dealing with and what she's going through, and I just didn't know. But when my daughter came, I was at Fort Hood. I was coming out of a month-long deployment in the woods for training, and my cell phone goes off, and or the captain comes out and says, "Hey, you need to go ASAP. Let somebody have your weapon. They'll clean it for you. You're about to have a baby." I stunk to the high heavens. I went to the hospital, and boy, was she coming fast. She ain't, it's like, you want to try to push it in. It ain't happening. She's coming out. And here's this, I forget what that wives' tale is. She had this white cloth around her when she was born.
Mm.
White hair, as white as can be. My little angel was born. And then here's the other story about my son. I'm working at MCI as a telecommunications engineer, and I passed out. Don't know why.
Mm.
So work called an ambulance, transported me to the local hospital. They're trying to figure me out. They call her, and it puts her into labor. So as I'm in the ER, she's having my son. So here I am doped up on an IV, and they're wheeling me up into the room so I can be there for my birth of my son. Fatherhood is special. It is a position of authority, not authoritarian. It is a position that is highly influential. So, men, happy Father's Day.
Mm.
And what's difficult for me is for a woman to cook a meal and bring it to me. I feel uncomfortable for that for a reason.
Mm-mm. So, Steve, would you please send a message to our audience, to our male audience, to our fathers? What would you like for them to know? Not just today, but right now. If you could plant one seed that would germinate, what would it be?
You're doing the best that you can with what you have. Always remember you can be authentic and not live in the hurt. If you allow yourself to be loved, you will share love because you can be love. And just get outside your head and knowing that you're trying to do the best that you can. We're going to make mistakes, and that's okay.
So, what I heard you saying is, man, receive love right now. You're worthy to receive all the love.
Yeah.
You are loved, you're guided, you have the realms around you, supporting you, guiding you. You're not alone.
Boy, do we feel like it though.
You're not alone. Receive the truth. There's so much more in the unseen working for you than your two eyes can see. Receive the truth that today, what's active and alive in you is truth. The truth that you're co-creating with God. And the best is not to come. The best only happens now. You get to decide and act in your decision. If you decide that you are the best dad in the world and you shift your identity today, what action can you back it up so you believe that on an embodiment level?
And what has helped me as we close is the fact that having my eyes on the spiritual realm has helped me. Because as I read the book of Psalms, it's a poetry book. Okay.
Yes.
Just don't accept it as a Bible. Just look at as here's a
book of
man,
poetry.
David, that poured his heart out in being vulnerability. And men, as David said in the Psalms, my bones wasted away and ached and hurt when I remained silent.
Oof.
Men, it's time to stand up and speak out in a healthy manner, to take your place, not in an authoritarian way, but in a way that you are respected as a Rock of Gibraltar, that you take care of your things, you take care of your woman, you take care of your family. So happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
And take care.
So much love.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Coached Soul, where we aim to empower and uplift you on your journey towards personal growth and well-being. Remember, as you navigate through life, you don't have to do it alone. We encourage you to reach out to professionals, seek support from loved ones, and take the time to prioritize your own well-being. Stay tuned for future episodes filled with even more valuable insights and actionable tips. Remember, you have the power to thrive. And with Coached Soul by your side, anything is possible. Until next time, take care, stay empowered, and keep shining your brightest light. For more information, contact Kenya at kenyacoachedsoul.com.